Okay. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I know it's early, and I know there were a lot of festivities last night, so I know you guys must be the diehards who are really enthusiastic about Lync. I really do appreciate you making it out early this morning. We'll do our best to make it worth your while. So by way of introduction, my name is Tom Bruss. I work with Accenture. Been with the company for about 18 years, and I spent the first part of my career doing IT consulting for our clients, so working for our clients. But I now work for our internal IT organization. So I'm part of the group that runs IT for Accenture. I have responsibility for workplace technology and collaboration, of which Lync is really the centerpiece of how we collaborate at Accenture. So I'm going to talk you through today our journey, a little bit about our Lync implementation, how we use it, how it's transformed the way our people work, and hopefully keep it a lively discussion for you. I'm joined by my colleague today, Vid Bayana. Vid?
Yep, thanks, Tom. Hi, everyone. I'm Vid. I have responsibility for our global infrastructure. I've been with Accenture for 26 years. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I must have done something to piss somebody off because they said, you're going to go run the Lync deployment globally for all your users. And it's been an interesting journey. I think I've survived, and so has Tom. So we're going to go through with you some of what we did to get Lync to be the primary unified comms tool at Accenture. Maybe before we get started, and Tom and I would like to make sure this is really interactive, so just stop us, raise your hand. We'll be watching for folks that have questions so we can make sure that we get your input. They gave us some T-shirts here, so we're going to go ahead and be handing these out for questions. I'll hand one out for any question that stumps Tom, which is going to be difficult to do. I have another one.
We don't have that many T-shirts.
No, well, we have 5. Well, we can make something up. We can lie about it. The other thing is, just to get a sense for the audience, how many of you here has deployed Lync globally? Okay. And how many of you use all of the modalities like audio, video, content sharing? Okay, smaller group. And how many have done enterprise voice? Oh, wow, okay, quite a few. How many are still hungover from last night? No? Okay. They're still sleeping, right? All right, so anyway, Tom's going to go ahead and kick this off and get us started.
Okay, great, thanks. Fun fact for everybody, Vid is actually my boss, so I'd appreciate it if you could keep the heckling to a minimum. If anyone wants to spontaneously cheer, that would be great too. Somehow, as Vid said, we've managed to do this Lync implementation and not get fired, so hopefully we're doing something right. I know it's early. We got a smaller group. There's official time at the end for questions, but I don't want to just drone on with slides for the next hour and put everybody back to sleep. So if you have questions, we're happy to keep it interactive and do questions as we go. So Vid will kind of be keeping his eye on the audience for people who have questions, and we're happy to kind of stop and go here to keep things lively. And T-shirts. So that's all I have to say. So just a little bit about the landscape of Accenture in case you're not familiar with us. We've got 323,000 employees. Actually, when you add in all the contractors that work for Accenture, I think we're up to about 357,000 Lync accounts today. So it's a massive environment, and we operate in over 200 cities. So it's a pretty diverse landscape, as most large companies are these days. Probably the even more telling thing on this slide is the 4,000 clients that we work at. So in addition to having all these offices, we have a good portion of our population that's never even in one of these offices. They're at our client sites, they're on the road, they're in hotels, and even when they're back home, they don't want to go into the office. They want to work from home when they actually get a chance to be home. So we've got an incredibly dispersed group of people. And this really drove our need to deploy a collaboration platform that could really stitch our people together in a way that would allow them to work like they were, even though the person may be on the other side of the world and another client, completely, different context, they'd be able to work like they were sitting in a cubicle right next to them, and really that's been one of our key successes with Lync. So just, the facts. The quick facts about our implementation. We have recently completed an upgrade to Lync Server 2013. That was a big milestone for us. Just finished that. Today we're all on premise. from Lync perspective, we're hosted in 4 data centers. We've got quite a bit of infrastructure out there, as those of you who are running it globally know. So we're in 4 data centers, but we do have it all deployed in a very, I'm not going to go too much into architecture, but we have a very highly available environment. We've got load balance pools of servers. We have failover in place from data center to data center. So I'll dive into more, but we've really tried to craft our environment to be bulletproof. You'll see some of the numbers here we do in terms of our volume, and it's integral to the way we do business, and it needs to be right and available, and that's the way we've built it. So in terms of the modalities that we're using, we have kind of a base offering that we give everybody in the company. So nearly everybody in the company has what we call basic, and that's basic instant message presence and then audio conferencing. So everybody has the ability to dial in, do audio. They can do dial-in conferencing. They can do peer-to-peer audio. And that's sort of the base for most people. And then we have some additional offerings on top of that our business units can choose if they want to deploy or not. So most people are enabled with desktop sharing. Then we've got about 2/3 of the population now, a little more than that are enabled with video. And then we have about 62,000 users who are using enterprise voice. These tend to be people in our consulting workforce. These tend to be people, as I mentioned, early part of my career, you're on the road, you're in consulting. These are the people that aren't in an office, aren't near a hard phone, and these are kind of our road warriors. And we actually, with Lync 2013, we've now enabled everybody in the company with Lync Mobile, which was a big win for us as well. So we kind of have this base offering, and then our business units can choose which additional capabilities they want to give to their people based on their on their specific workforce and how their people behave. So as we started down our Lync journey, it was important to us that Lync wasn't just an IT project, that IT was rolling this out and it's another tool and we're giving it to our people, and it wasn't just something that was IT-led. And we wanted Lync to really, for Lync to be successful, it really needs to transform the way people work. And so for us, we thought about it, this is kind of the framework and the way that we thought about it. And I'm going to dive more into each of these as the deck goes on. But, for us, it started with culture. If you're talking about the way people work, this is how they spend most of their day. And that's a very cultural thing. And in most organizations, regardless of what your culture is, culture tends to be dictated from the top down. People do what their leaders do. So for us, it was very important as part of the program to get our leaders using it. We found that when somebody saw their supervisor or one of their leaders scheduling a call via Lync, they were more apt to then follow the actions of their supervisor. So it was kind of a top down, in terms of that was one of the angles we did from an adoption perspective. And it was important for us to have leadership on board. We also have a fairly competitive culture, as I'm sure most of you do as well. So, we worked into it some recognition, and we'll go into some of the things that we did there. But we tried to make it a little competitive for people. How are people in your peer group? How many minutes of video or audio or things like that had they done that month? And and try and make different business units stay competitive with each other in terms of who was adopting and using Lync the most.
So, employees will do what their leaders do, right, or ask them to do. How do you get leaders to do something that you want them to do? You give them free stuff. So we would go to all the leadership conferences, and we'd be handing out the Jabra speakerphones. It's a cool toy. And even if they already had one, they'd come back for another one. It's like they'd have 2 or 3. And so it was the giveaways that got them to start using a lot of this stuff in the early days.
Much like the conference here today.
That's right, yeah.
Love those giveaways
T-shirt?
at the exit hall. T-shirts, whatever we got to do, bribe people. So we wanted shared goals as well. This wasn't just, there's some great benefits for our IT organization. We save telecom costs and conferencing costs. But, we wanted the business to have skin in the game as well. And for us, it was about travel, and Lync helping to reduce travel. In our world, travel is part of Accenture's cost of goods sold, and that's part of our business. And there's always pressure to reduce our cost of goods sold. So they had some skin in the game as well in terms of benefits. And as we established our success criteria and what metrics we were going to measure ourselves on, we had different people from our business involved in helping to set that and measure that and help set the direction for the program. Technology, obviously, it's got to, as I said, it's got to be bulletproof. I'm going to talk about the way we run it, but it's just, the technology had to work. Otherwise, we failed. And if people have a bad experience, it can be difficult to get them to come back to it. So it's just, we actually treat this probably as from an operational perspective, we actually call it like a tier 0 application at Accenture. It is high, we treat it with a higher level of priority than I think anything else that we run in the company. Processes and adoption. One of the big things for us with Lync was getting Lync embedded into various business processes. We sat down and we looked at what are some of the things that people do and how can we embed Lync as an option into those processes. So we have a lot of people that travel. We actually sat down with our travel team, and when somebody calls or tries to book a flight or something like that, there are messages that come up and say, hey, was Lync an option for you today? Or was video an option? Did you really need to travel for this? We've got different new hire training that as Skype comes available, we're excited to start using Skype to connect with people, for hiring interviews, and then using Lync for actual training of people, which is exciting for us. And then, one of the key use cases for us, there's several of them, but a lot of times we have people developing proposals for our clients. That's a big common use case in Accenture. And what happens is someone has a proposal, you get your team together, you call them up, everybody flies into an office somewhere, and they hunker down in a conference room for a week or two while they're pounding out this proposal. And that's all money, all the money you're spending on that travel, that's not money that's ever billed to a client or anything. That's not money that's just money out the door. And is that really the most effective way to work on collaborating for a proposal? Especially if there's really maybe just some experts that you need to bring into the process that just need to contribute as a subject matter expert for a couple hours. How do you find them, connect with them, and be able to bring them in without, again, flying everybody and holing up in a conference room until all hours. So that was a key one for us. And there's probably similar things like that in your organizations where there's just a business process where Lync is a good fit. And then finally, governance and policies. I talked about the buy-in from the business. We did establish a steering committee that had, we had joint sponsorship of the actual program, and we had representatives from various parts of the business in there helping us to make key decisions. And we also, we recover a lot, we've put a lot of investment into Lync and investment into making it bulletproof, and some of those costs are recovered from our business, so we had guidance from them in establishing a build-back process and what our recoveries would be, and so it was very much a joint effort, not just an IT project.
In the early days, our governance, like our steering committee, was really comprised of some very senior people in the company. So we had what we call the Collaboration 2.0 program. We had our sponsor was our chief operating officer for the company. And we have vertical industry groups and some horizontal service lines. And we had a couple of the chief operating officers of those industry areas, as well as our CTO, chief marketing lead, participate because we really wanted to make sure that the business was behind what we were trying to do. And today, our CEO, in many of the messages or when he does global webcasts, he really references Lync and a lot of our collaboration tools as the Accenture way of working. So getting that sponsorship, I think, is really key.
Mm-hmm. And so one of the key groups in our business that we worked with was actually our workplace group. So our workplace group, the people that manage those 200 offices we were talking about, they saw Lync as an opportunity to transform our workplace. We call it the workplace of the future. I think we branded it Workplace 2.0 at one point. But those 200 offices that I'm mentioning to you, they're all in big cities, expensive locations. We have a lot of real estate. And they saw Lync as an opportunity to reduce our real estate footprint and really transform our offices. So we have, I mentioned, a lot of our people are on the road. And our culture is usually you're gone Monday through Thursday, Friday you're back in your home office. And it used to be on Fridays people would trudge into their home office and there'd be a spike in the capacity, and that needed to be planned for. But now with Lync, you can pretty much work outside of the office without having to go in. There's really not much of a need to go into the office, so we were able to smooth out some of that spike. And even the people that do go to an office on a regular basis, they don't need to go as often anymore. We even in IT for a while piloted, 3 days in the office, 2 days out, or maybe it was reversed. But we kind of made it part of IT-led, by our behavior, and just do you need to come into the office every single day? And I think our people really appreciated, especially in and around these big cities, not having to do that commute. I know I'm from the New York City area, and I have an awful commute, and I really enjoy not having to do that every day. I can actually have dinner with my kids at night. It's wonderful. So, this is, it's really kind of transforming what the workplace, what the office looks like. In fact, one of the other steps they've taken is instead of cubicles with handsets and traditional phones, we're now starting to take phones off desks in some of these offices. Because they're noticing, now that Lync has such massive adoption in the company, when you see people in an office working, the handset's just sitting there. No, you rarely ever see anybody on it. They've always got a headset on. They're always on Lync. And so this was an enabler. We're actually starting to pick phones off desks and maybe just leave them in common areas or conference rooms or things like that. And so, this was the vision of our workplace group is that the office isn't a place where people come to work. It's a place where people come to collaborate for a specific task. And Lync is really an enabler of that. And we're starting to look at some of the new Lync room systems, the Surface Hub, things like that. That'll just add to the experience. It's when you need to collaborate live in a small group of people and beam some people in. It's a different type of environment. It's not a bunch of people sitting in cubicles all day.
Yeah, we have our workplace group has something called Workplace 2.0. So all new offices really you go in wireless, handsets only in enclosed offices or rooms with speaker capability. And when we first started, they basically quantified that they could reduce real estate footprint by about 33% in the office locations, especially with remote working and the hoteling concept of people coming in and being able to reserve. In India, they just approved going from we have one desk phone for every 2 people. They're going to a 1-to-10 ratio. Primarily, and it wasn't that we actually asked them to do that. It's because when you walk around the office, people aren't using those headsets anymore. It's just so much more convenient to be on a headset, working on your PC and having, your hands free to go do other multitasking work, go check on sports scores, that type of stuff.
And so, obviously, there was a lot of benefits with audio, with Lync and our audio. I think when I first sat down to try and write the business case for Lync, thought about, okay, how are we going to get the business involved? How are we going to sell it? And of course, what popped into mind was productivity. This is great. It's a great productivity enhancer. And I think I wrote up a business case that said, if we saved everybody in the company 10 minutes, and then you multiply that 10 minutes times number of employees, times the average, hourly rate of an employee, it came out to like $1 billion worth of savings or something ridiculous like that. That just didn't hold water. I think Vid might even laughed at me at some point.
Well, I didn't laugh at that. It was I get 10% of the savings comment that I laughed at.
Yeah, he's like, as long as it gets funneled into Vid's secret account. Yeah. So, the real thing, there's a lot of benefits from Lync. The one thing that was the easiest for us to quantify, and would probably be the easiest for you to quantify, is your actual audio conferencing. We had a legacy audio conferencing platform. We were lucky in that we had one vendor, so it was one piece of paper to look at. We had a recurring monthly spend, with that vendor, and we could watch that spend decrease. And we measured, how much were we spending per minute with the legacy audio conferencing vendor versus we did a calculation for how much we spend per minute on Lync conferencing. And if you look at the per minute spend, because there was growth in there over this time as well that I'll show you soon, it was about an 83% savings reduction. And that was very clear, cut and dry, simple to understand, and that paid for Lync right there. There's certainly a lot of other benefits. With the click to join, we noticed 82% of all of our calls are actually click to join, so doing peer-to-peer type VoIP versus actual dial-in. So obviously that's saving money on either a mobile call or an actual handset. Now, this was a little bit harder for us to quantify because, those 200 offices, 56 countries, they all roll up, finding bills that people are paying to their local carriers. That was trickier to quantify. The way we approached it was we were eventually able to kind of look at some of our key countries and what was just the average per minute spend for a mobile call, an average per minute spend for a handset call. And we eventually got buy-in from our steering committee, the business, say, okay, for every peer-to-peer minute with Lync, you're allowed to claim, whatever that global average was, because you're displacing a call. It was just very difficult to say, well, this displaced that and where. So that was a little bit harder, but that also supported our business case. And then, the other piece of this, so I actually think we're up to about 99.8% of all of our conferencing is on Lync at this point. So it's a lot. And the other piece that helped us save is on the handsets. As I mentioned, we're starting to take some off desk. So it's really, there isn't always a great business case to retire an existing handset. We're mostly just taking them off desks because they're clutter at this point, and it looks almost, in some cases, old-fashioned. But with new offices, when you have to make that initial capital investment in handsets and things, either we can redeploy from some of the offices where we're pulling it off, or we can avoid that capital.
How many of you have made a business case for Lync based on telecom cost reduction? Okay, that's interesting. And if you had to prove it, like is any sort of audit of cost reductions and stuff? Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, I think the savings are really there. We're seeing our overall telecom costs continue to go down as well. We have this process. It's almost like a colonoscopy with internal audit, picking random projects at times, going through and saying, did you actually realize the savings you claimed? And Tom's been through a few of those, and he's come out clean.
Yeah. They're fun. Oh, lots of fun.
Oh, question?
So can you get in a little bit more in ROI, how you guys quantify the ROI and KPI in terms of how Lync, because it's always hard to quantify the tangible benefits in the organization of you guys.
Yeah. So the question for those that didn't hear is, can we go into a little bit about quantifying the ROI and the metrics and the benefits? Do you want to cover that, Tom?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, for us, with the audio conferencing, it really was about, you had to come up with that per minute calculation. So once we got agreement that, hey, this, we had a bill for audio conferencing that we could say we're spending this much per minute. And with Lync, we're spending this much per minute. And it was 83% less on a per minute basis. And so we got agreement from the steering committee for that delta, which is like 2.5 cents or something like that. For that delta, we were allowed to claim 2.5 cents per Lync conferencing minute. And as you'll see on the next slide, we've got, there's it's coming up. I mean, we're upwards of 140 million minutes of audio conferencing. So that alone is a pretty substantial savings. And then when it comes to the peer-to-peer and enterprise voice, enterprise voice, we assumed you're avoiding a mobile call. And with the mobile call, we looked through some of the mobile bills, for some of our key countries and came up with, on average, it's 5 cents a minute or something like that. And so we were allowed to claim 5 cents for every minute. Same with peer-to-peer. It avoided handset call. That was on average a few cents a minute, And so that was those were the easier things to quantify. Quantifying, avoiding handsets, that's a little trickier. Quantifying travel, to be honest with you, was a little bit trickier. Travel, was just a broader initiative. There were a lot of things that contributed to travel reduction. Lync was a key piece of it. I'm going to talk about video. Video really helped. We've got a lot of other video solutions. And then there's our travel spend. I think at one point in time Accenture may have been like a third of all the traffic in and out of O'Hare Airport on a Sunday night. So it was really important to us to reduce that. So there were a lot of things. So it was very difficult to say, well, Lync saved this much travel. We know it did. So
yeah, I'd say the hard metrics were really our third-party audio conferencing spend. And then we do measure telecom audio costs globally and by country, and we saw that decline. Now, when we were going through the audit, they were like, well, aren't unit costs reducing anyway? And the answer is yes, right, for traditional PSTN. So we had to have a factor. And then everything else was really more derivation based on an average cost per minute.
Yeah.
So from the chart here, it looks like net audio conferencing has dramatically risen.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's a very interesting phenomenon. Can you tell us more about that?
I think there's two factors. One, during this period from 2011 to 2015, we've grown as a company. We've probably added a third of our workforce during that time period, so we're grown. I also believe that people like the Lync experience more. It's kind of the difference between using a traditional phone and a mobile phone. People like the extra, people like the extra features, and it makes the meeting more dynamic, so it's more the go-to for people. Whereas before it might have just been a phone call or a face-to-face meeting. I think it's very telling. People will come into the office, have face-to-face meetings. Now they're out because they like it's an easier experience.
Yeah, and I think a few other kind of comments. So the headcount growth, people working more remotely, relying on audio conferencing. Some of this was probably buried in our Cisco call managers where people would just do kind of three-way calling or four-way calling ad hoc. It's just so much easier with Lync to drag and drop people in. So I think those are some of the big contributors. And then with the plugin, right, the Outlook plugin, it's just very easy to just set up even if it's a one-on-one, you set up a conference, right? And so I think that's whereas with traditional audio conferencing, you would just call the person directly.
I've got one question about the physical phones. So obviously, if you're transitioning from something like Cisco, you've got a physical phone deployment. There's no driver from the business to go immediately to a headset. So how do you then justify replacing a physical phone, which is effectively a Lync phone, with from everyone I spoke to, with the intention of getting rid of it when the business wants it?
Yeah.
How do you justify that?
I can take that
Yeah,
one.
go ahead.
The question, for those who didn't hear it, was how did you justify the investment in headsets for Lync when you still got phones on the desk? And it was very, I'd say there were a couple things. So when I say we're starting to remove handsets from desks, the headsets came way before that. We're almost just removing them now because people just aren't using them. It wasn't that we said we're going to remove it and now give you a handset, because that asset, for the most part, might be 5-10 years old, fully depreciated. There really wasn't a business case for that. What we found is, we actually publish a catalog of headsets, and we've got a cheapy one that we got buy-in from the business. Anyone who wants one can kind of have the cheap version. They can walk up to their local technology support and get the free one. And then we've got a range of more expensive ones, the fancy Bluetooth decked ones. We've got a range up and down the ladder, and people can go on and they can give us a charge code and they can get something better if they want. And then, as Vid said, free stuff. I mean, we go to community meetings, we just hand out headsets wherever we can, and that was a key piece to driving adoption as well.
Yeah, and early days we did have, we were questioned quite a bit about, well, gee, are you really saving money because now you have to buy these, $30, $50 headsets, headsets for people. And we went back to kind of the business case about minutes or cost per minute avoided by using Lync. And we basically said, look, if people are going to use this many minutes per month or per year, that'll pay for the headsets. What we also found were people initially were just using their headsets for mobile phones, right, for iPhones or whatever, plugging it into the dock. The final kind of thing that got people over the hump was the notion of being able to work anywhere, anytime, and that you now aren't tethered to having to be at your desk or your phone, and those were the factors that really got the business over the learning curve. Question?
So in your previous slide, you mentioned 99.5% of the audio conferencing is done on Lync now. What's your maximum number of participants on a Lync conference, and what are you doing beyond for that 5%?
Yeah. Our maximum limit is, the question was, what's our maximum size for a Lync conference in terms of number of participants? We cap it at 250 users. And above and beyond that, that kind of accounts for that last 2%. We have kind of a higher end executive conferencing service where if we do investor calls, things like that, they're on that service. That in those large kind of audio casts, we have a separate audio casting and webcasting service that tends to account for that last bit. Now, you've probably heard some of the announcements. Skype for Business. One of the things we're very excited about with Skype for Business is sort of that casting capability coming with Skype, and the ability to, purchase a service in the cloud that'll get those larger meeting scenarios, and we're excited to start piloting that when we can. Actually,
I think we can go beyond 250. I was talking to someone from Turkey. I think they've done 1,000-person audio conferences, and I asked Andrew Snyderman. I think he's hiding somewhere in the room here. I asked him why the 250 limit, because I've been too scared to kind of override the engineers that say, well, that's all it's been tested for. Microsoft recommends you don't do it. But I think after this session, I'm going to go back and say, if they can do it in Turkey, we can do it here. So.
Oh, it's a big debate. It's a big debate, I'll tell you.
I keep asking every few months.
Hey, like, Tom, what about that 250 user limit? Well,
they do this Jedi mind trick on me, Vid. It won't work.
One more question? that's a good question. I mean, getting the network right is.
Could you repeat that?
Sorry, the question was, as we saw the growth in audio conferencing and more peer-to-peer, did we see a growth in our network and our network costs? And the answer is yes. That was Vid getting upset about some of the network costs.
Ouch.
Getting the network right, is probably, is the foundation for Lync, right? And so we literally have a team going subnet by subnet, looking at how Lync is behaving on the network. We do selectively upgrade bandwidth in locations that need it. We're now starting to experiment with Lync HD, and obviously that has a big bandwidth component. And so we're starting off lightly with some of the executives. We're trying to quantify what is the impact. And then for sites and parts of the business that do want to adopt it, we'll go out and we'll add some network bandwidth for them. That's the main reason why we don't have the entire company using video or desktop share, is because there are parts of our business and our delivery centers that are extremely cost conscious, and they do not, they don't want anything that's going to increase their bandwidth costs and their per seat cost. Some of our delivery centers, and so that's why in some cases we give them the option. Okay, if you're not ready to make that investment in network, you can opt out.
So yeah, one of the things is before we had deployed Lync, we had deployed Cisco call managers globally, and so audio was already in kind of our EF quality of service class service. With Lync, we did the same thing. So a lot of it was displacement of the Cisco traffic on our network. When we deployed Lync video and content sharing, and this is a difficult thing to do, right? But we got buy-in from the business that we were going to over provision bandwidth and capacity in anticipation of more desktop video, kind of banking on the travel savings. And then operationally, we put in a process where as you get to 50-60% utilization, that would automatically trigger upgrades. Where we've had the biggest challenge with that is really India, Philippines, and China, where bandwidth costs are really high. And now that they're starting to see the value, they're actually proactively coming and saying, all right, we recognize that the bandwidth has to kind of lead the usage and adoption. So luckily, with the adoption that we've gotten, people are kind of getting on the bandwagon of we have to have the network. Go ahead.
So you mentioned you had Cisco call managers. How did you get call managers to play nice on the priority queues on the late?
Oh, that's a tough question. Tom?
Yes. Well, so to be clear, we have both.
Oh, repeat the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, since we have Cisco Call Manager, how did we get the two to play nicely on our LAN and WAN together? So today we have quality of service in place, and Lync and Cisco IP telephony traffic actually have the same priority on the network. It's just about getting that queue rightly sized. We don't, in terms of the actual, we don't have much integration between the call manager and Lync. In fact, what we do for those 62,000 people that are enterprise voice, we actually take their business number off of call manager and put it onto Lync. And so when a call comes into the local gateway, it says, oh, you're a Lync number, I'm going to go over to the mediation server and go from there. They're not integrated today. No.
And that was a conscious decision. I mean, we went back and forth about call admission control. Should one have kind of CAC priority versus the other? And we just decided that it was just going to be too complex to try to do on the network. So that's why we said, if we're going to deploy enterprise voice to someone, they're fully on Lync, and that's where they get all the call controls and things like that.
So kind of a follow-up to that. So you just had to over-provision your priority queues everywhere to make sure that you didn't overrun them?
The question was, did we then over-provision the priority queues? Actually, we kind of made the assumption that they would displace one would displace the other. So we over-provisioned bandwidth in total, but I don't recall having to do much to say, well, EF is going to increase by a certain amount. Maybe we did by a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we look at the network circuit holistically, and there's lots of things getting pumped through there, not just Lync. Lync may be a big portion of it, but we've got other video and stuff. And so there's a team that monitors the network, and when a site hits 80% of their threshold, something like that, then a process gets kicked off to go provision more bandwidth. Or if the site's unwilling to pay for it, there's usually a good case to make, or maybe we can throttle back a little bit in terms of some of the capability. But mostly when people had this stuff and they start using it, at first it was a bit of a battle. to get sites to want to go out and buy that bandwidth. But then, we found the employees were actually, they were in pull mode after a while because their employees demanded it, and they wanted, how come this person could do video and I can't? And eventually they relented and said, oh yeah, all right, let's go do this. The business case became obvious, and which is the right thing to do.
Question?
For you guys, Lync audio conference is PSTN enabled. Are you guys allowing to dial in?
Yep. Yeah, the question was, are we PSTN enabled for Lync conferencing? So can you dial in via the PSTN? And the answer is yes. So we have numbers in
45, 50
countries, something like that. And that accounts for that 18%. So we have 82% that are click to join, VoIP, and then another 18% of people that dial in.
So how are you guys integrating Lync with PSTN?
It's just via, how are we integrating Lync with our PSTN? It's just via local voice gateways. So we have local Accenture-owned dial-in numbers that are with the local gateway coming through there. And
Either through SIP trunking or in many countries, PSTN into the gateway.
Yeah.
The folks that you ported onto voice, did you migrate their numbers? Did you ported their numbers over?
Yeah, the question was, did we port over people's numbers that are enterprise voice? And we did. Yeah, the number that's on their business card is a Lync number. We took that same number off.
Were you able to do that globally?
Well, yes. The only place we haven't been able to do it is India. As those of you probably know, due to that is the one country, and we are constantly working with Microsoft to understand how are you getting Skype into India? When can we take advantage of it? As the one country where we don't have enterprise voice. Question right here.
I assume you have separate PBX systems, Lync and Cisco.
Mm-hmm.
Just managing both. How do you justify the cost of
Yeah. The question was, since we manage two separate PBX systems, Lync and Cisco, how do we justify the cost of both? One thing I'll say is that most of our Cisco...
We charge double?
Yeah. We do. That's sort of a way. I mean, we do recover for the infrastructure costs. So when you have a handset, we recover for those call managers, those Cisco call managers. Now, it was a little bit easier because that investment in call manager is older than our investment in Lync. So in many cases, those costs are decreasing as it gets depreciated. But we recover for handsets and offices. We also recover for those people that use enterprise voice. We charge people, a monthly fee to do it. So we make the cost back.
But I think that is one of the things it's driving some of the geographies and the businesses take handsets off, then they get a lower cost allocation. But over time, when you have the fixed costs, it's going to get more and more expensive. And I think one of the decisions we have to make is really when do we make the plunge for, are we going to go Lync with global enterprise voice? Will it be ready? When will it be ready? And so those are some factors that we have to think about. But if you think about it, you'd have the Lync costs anyway if you were just doing IM and presence, and even if you didn't do enterprise voice. So it's a very small incremental cost to kind of add on some of those additional feature sets. So I think most companies, you're going to have those dual costs regardless.
Yeah, maybe you're going to get to this, but like best practices or something. But we're fully on voice enterprises as well in Lync. Right now, we're still on Lync 2010, upgraded to Lync 2013. The biggest issue we have is voice quality, or maybe some of the nuances of transferring the call, etc. But primarily, it's the voice quality issue. I don't know if you've dealt with that.
Yeah, I think we're going to get into that a little bit.
You're going to get into that.
Yeah.
It's the same scenario. We're a consulting company. All of our users are remote.
Yeah.
We do have offices that they come into, etc.
Which consulting company? I don't know if we can.
Point B.
I'm just teasing.
Yeah, we'll definitely. That's call quality is top of our list.
Okay.
So I think let me shift gears. As you can see, we're doing a lot of video and video and desktop share as well. I think now 1 out of every 3 meetings has a desktop share in it. We've got about 1 out of every 10 meetings, excuse me, that has video included. But video is actually where we're seeing a lot of the growth. And video for us, we think, is one of the biggest transformation factors in our workforce. Being able, I've actually met a bunch of people at Accenture at the conference today who have never met face to face, yet I instantly knew who they were when I saw them, and folks from Microsoft, and just connecting with them over video. People that I work with closely, Vid and I are probably on a video call together every single day. And we have this saying that video is the new voice in the company. So right now it's about 10% of all meetings, but we see this as a dramatically increasing. As you can see by the bar here, it's well outpacing the conference room, the hard unit type video. Now we're certainly looking at Lync rooms and Surface Hubs, and we're excited about that, but when we think about what does it mean that video is the new voice, it just needs to be easy. That's what it means to us. It needs to be easy. And I mentioned I'm from the New York City area. I grew up in Buffalo. My parents still live there. I've got 2 little boys at home, ages 5 and 8, and they don't get to see their grandparents very often. And so, of course, every Saturday morning we do a Skype call, and Skype is just easy. My 5-year-old gets it. My parents, they know, they understand it. It's simple, it's easy, and they just use that experience. And we're really excited, actually, to see that Skype experience that people are used to in their personal lives, that I'm sure everybody has used at one time or another, come to Lync. Not that Lync was terribly difficult to figure out, but it's the same experience. And so it's funny. My kids actually, they don't even understand a call that doesn't have video. When you do an audio call, they're like, who would do this? Why an audio only? They think it's boring. And they, it's kind of like if I try and show them some old vinyl or something like that, they're kind of like, what? Who would ever do it that way? Now I know vinyls, make a little bit of a comeback.
Well,
But,
based on our call the other day, they have no fear of just walking right in front of the camera and talking to Dad. It's like, hey, Dad, can I go outside to play? It's like, I'm on a work call, but it doesn't matter to them.
Yep, doesn't matter. Yeah, my kids just think I talk to my friends all day on video. That's what I do for a living, So, that's a bit of an extreme case with my kids, but I can tell you, the millennials, the millennial generation, it's coming. And we notice, that's just the default mode of communication, for people coming out of universities. And we actually have, the average age of an Accenture employee is like late 20s. So I'm actually a pretty old guy there, and people, maybe your workforce isn't as extreme, but I think the millennials are going to be like half of the workforce within the next couple of years. So it's coming, they expect it, and we're trying to be ahead of the curve here because we really think this is the way people are going to communicate in the future, and it's got to be simple and easy. One question back there? Are we measuring each feed, like the usage? Yeah. We use we measure usage. We use the Lync monitoring system to measure. We've got monitoring servers in place. We've even got some archives, and we use that to measure and report on our usage, as well as I'll get into a lot of other things. I'll talk about shift gears a little bit and talk about how we run it. As I mentioned, it's bulletproof. It has to be bulletproof for us. We do you add it all at 180 million minutes a month of audio. We talk a lot. That's our business. We're consultants. We talk, and our people just expect it to work. And we've made a lot of investments in trying to run Lync as a carrier grade solution. That's the term we use. It's got to be carrier grade. It has to just work. Our Lync operations team is, I think, upwards of 50 people at this point. And we have people working 24/7, 365, monitoring Lync, looking at a variety of reports coming. We use System Center to maintain consistent configuration across these. I think we have upwards of 200 servers for Lync, and we use SCOM for monitoring and alerts. And we actually have teams looking at these reports consistently. When one shift rolls over to another, they look at those reports. They look at the key metrics and some of the key diag codes that came up for the day. Leadership reviews those reports on a daily basis. And one thing I'll say, for Microsoft, they almost give you too much here. I probably won't ever say that about anything else because, of course, our Microsoft team knows we want everything immediately now. I have to have it. I want this custom thing. But Microsoft really gives you a lot in terms of reporting and in terms of alerts, in terms of diag codes. I mean, there are a lot of tools at your disposal. And for us, when we sat down and we were thinking about this, it was almost difficult to sift through, these hundreds of reports at our disposal. What are the ones we should be paying attention to? Because nobody can be, unless you're on the Lync product team, nobody really understands all of those reports, what they all mean, what's important, what are the things the team needs to focus on.
So we had to spend a lot of time early on in the first couple of years really customizing. And there's 3 categories of reports we narrowed in on. One was usage and adoption, which was the question you had asked about. How are we going to measure it? And we'll talk about how we use the usage and adoption metrics to drive even more use of the solution. Second is health. So what are the reports that can tell us about the health of the environment, the application, that type of thing? The third is quality. So there's 3 sets of reports, different teams focus on each of those. And the quality really is about the end user experience, and we'll get into that a little bit as well.
Yeah. This is an example of one of the quality reports that we look at. So we measure, what percentage of our sessions were poor. And we look at it from a couple of aspects. So one, we look at what the server says is poor. We've set some thresholds in terms of what, we had to fine tune it a little bit, set some thresholds in terms of what is, from a MOS score perspective, what is defined as a poor quality call, where do we want to set those thresholds? And so we've been, as our number of sessions grow and we monitor call quality on the back end, we kind of keep a pulse on things. And, with 180 million minutes of audio, it's really difficult to distinguish what's just noise versus a real systematic quality issue in your environment. We'll hear from our CIO, that heard from some executive that, I had this terrible Lync call the other day, and so they'll inevitably come to us, and turns out, sometimes there are real issues, sometimes, someone is on a hotel wireless connection, streaming video, sometimes it's just a user education thing, even with the dial-in, the PSN dial-in, people don't realize, well, maybe the VoIP isn't working, but you can always dial in just like you could in the old audio conferencing world. So a lot of times it's education. A lot of times, if there is something systematic, we want to be ahead of it. And it is difficult. You want to, as IT professionals, you want to be able to tell your story. If someone comes to you and says, I'm hearing noise about Lync, is Lync, what's going on? And you're saying, no, everything's fine. You need to be able to justify it. And we can, in getting those quality metrics defined and published and showing trends over time, that really helped us. Focus in.
Just going back real quick, I think for us, we really had to get more segmented in looking at call quality. So looking at inside, what can we control? So inside an Accenture office location versus outside, and then wired versus wireless. And you'll see here our target, our service level target is 1% or lower poor call quality if you're in an Accenture location wired. And we try to get to 3%. We're not there. We're at around 4% if everyone's wireless. And that's where there's very detailed kind of reporting we do on LAN segments or subnets in our office locations to see where there's deviations from the norm and going and picking off the ones with the highest poor call quality. If you go outside of the network, then you range anywhere from 7% poor call quality to 20%, and that's where what Tom's going to talk about next is the end user survey that's really come in handy about helping people when they're outside of an Accenture location.
And that's a great point, Vid. Biggest lesson learned, do yourselves a favor, understand what you can control and what you can't. Because you're never going to be able to guarantee that somebody sitting on a hotel wireless is going to have a great call. It's outside of your control. And we have, as I mentioned, we have a lot of people at client sites. We don't have control over our clients' networks. So for that, we've tried to segment and this is what we can control. They're on an Accenture managed endpoint on an Accenture network. We can make sure they have the right drivers. They have, we can make sure their network subnets are configured correctly and Lync is behaving. That we can control, and that's where we really focused all of our efforts. And then for the people that are outside, it was more just about educating about best practices. If you're having a bad experience, join in. Question right here.
So, what are you guys doing within the Accenture network for wireless? Are you guys doing something on the wireless level to assure the quality on that side?
Other than just making sure that the wireless access points or the density and all that type of stuff is set. That one decision we did make was we're refreshing all of our wireless with Aruba. so that we can get QoS to the access point, right, and not just at the controller. And we have found that the Aruba access points offer better call quality, and we've noticed improvements in the locations where we've deployed that.
Question?
So earlier mentioned how 50% of our workforce will be millennials before we know it, as we get old, I guess. Right? So with that comes a proliferation of devices that are not Windows-based. I don't know if Accenture allows Macs or non-Windows-based, and what has your experience been with the client on a Mac as compared to Windows, and is there, I mean, we all know iTunes on a PC sucks. I don't know if Lync on a Mac is any better, right? So.
Yeah, and so the question was, as the millennials come into the workforce and they want to bring their own fancy devices, and they want Macs and things like that, what's our experience been with Lync, and do we allow it? And now, there's a couple of ways we approach it. We do have a bring your own PC program that we are piloting right now. It's a small group, but you can actually turn in your Accenture laptop, and then you run a certain set of compliance software, and there's actually like a virtual machine you can run that has a Windows-based image, and you can run Lync on it. And at least that, you'll get the fully featured Lync experience. There's also the Office for Mac suite, which lags. We're very excited to see some of the announcements with, I think it's Office for Mac 2016, where they're closing a lot of the gaps. So we're excited about that. But the way we've approached it so far is to kind of give people on an alternative device a virtual machine, so they can emulate that experience. The other thing that we really liked about 2013, probably the biggest, in terms of new features, the things that was most exciting to us with Lync 2013 was the join via your browser option. So for people joining via Macs or other PCs, if they're not the scheduler and they're just joining the call, they can join via a browser, and it's fully featured. And we have a lot of clients that join our meetings, and who knows what they're on. They may not have the Lync client, they may even be federated, they may be on a Mac. They can now join via the browser and have the same experience as people outside.
Yeah, I'd say, early on, people using Macs we found had a worse experience than people using Windows, right? So now that's improved with some of the more recent Lync for Mac client updates. We also find that people that aren't using kind of an Accenture managed device, drivers, right? Network drivers or whatever driver updates, and whether they're compatible with our wireless infrastructure or whatever. And the third big thing is home networks and the quality of the home networks. But I'd say that people have kind of learned. So if they have a bad experience, then they'll dial in generally. So we haven't noticed a huge issue with people using Macs. But maybe go into the user survey, because that's where we catch some of these things.
Yeah, this is another thing that we're excited about, the new Skype client. So we have developed our own custom end user survey, very similar to the Skype, how good was your call, good, fair, poor, the 5-star thing. In fact, we're excited. We think when the 5-star thing comes with the new Skype for Business client, that we can probably retire this in favor of that. But we've had this in place for a few years now, and what we found was, sometimes the server said they had a good call, but they had a bad experience. So this wasn't a good call. And how do we capture the end user sentiment? And so this is just a simple pop-up. It's random. It goes to a certain portion of the population, and people can click good, fair, poor. And if they click fair or poor, they have the option to provide some more detail, or click if they're willing to be contacted by someone in IT to help them out with their issue. And I think that some of the stats to date, we've contacted over 5,700 people that have responded, and so we monitor that. And you got to take sometimes survey results with a little bit of a grain of salt, because you find the poor percentage we have there is a little bit higher. It's more like in the 5% range, but people tend to just respond to a survey when they had a bad experience. If it's good, they kind of let it go. So you take it with a grain of salt, but we can measure the trends. We can tell, is the end user sentiment, trending upwards or downwards. And this kind of point of use follow-up survey has been really, we have people that just spend all day contacting people and say, hey, you reported a bad experience, what can we do? And that's where that education piece comes in. They don't realize that you can just dial in if you're having a bad experience. They don't realize, maybe you shouldn't be using it on a hotel wireless network. And that's really, it has had a really positive effect on us educating our users.
Yeah, there's a snowball effect, right? So these 5,700 people we contact and actually help, then they tell other people, well, this is what resolved my issue. So it really helps kind of get a little bit more broadly, a broader education across the workforce.
Mm-hmm. Yes?
Do you guys use any analytics software like Nectar or Net0 or anything to kind of get a little bit more analysis and dashboard?
We are not yet. The question was, do we use any of the analytics software? And we're mostly using things right out of SCOM. We have, I think we've done some testing with some of the other analytics tools. We've looked at them. There's some really interesting third-party products out there for sure. We've had a very mature operations process in place using some of this, and yeah, some of those analytics might help. We found this. Some of those things can be a little pricey too. We haven't found. I don't know if there's anybody in the room from that. They're interesting products, but we've at least so far felt that we've been able to get control over call quality. That those tools really weren't going to buy us that much extra value. But there are some really interesting things out there.
You've been asking the most questions, so here you go. Uh-oh. Oh, so sorry. I have to practice my throwing. Because I hit you in the head, I can give you one. All right.
Is that Lync survey that you said that users automated, and if so, how did you do that? Or are you just finding people that have made voice calls and sending them manually?
So the question was, is the survey automated? Yes, it is automated. There is code that picks. It's not people monitoring call and then clicking a button and having a survey sent. That's all completely automated and random. The follow-up process obviously is, there's people that look at, okay, how many responses did we get? How many people do we want to be followed up with? In terms of how it was coded, I might just have to give you a T-shirt and punt on that question.
Wow, first time I've seen Tom stumped. Yeah, we had one of our developers from the project team put it together, and they set certain parameters that we can control, frequency of how often does someone get it, how many times a week, that type of thing. So, question? Yeah.
What do you guys do for boss admin in the sidecar? Have you used that? Have you had to find a solution for that yet?
Yeah, the question was, what do you do for sort of the boss admin EA type setup? We still do kind of have the hard sidecar in some of our offices. Most of them. They are still using, for the heavy boss admin users, they're still on the IP telephony hard phone side of things. We have experimented with Lync. We are using some of the new features with Lync 2013. It does get better. It depends on how heavy the user is in that front. But we are finding there's a portion of boss admin type things where it works well. And we can do it. It can't do everything yet. Your real power users, it's not quite there yet, but we have experimented in some offices.
So you're still using the Cisco then for that?
In some cases, yeah. In some cases, we have like a Cisco sidecar.
But I'd say in a good portion, well, pretty much all of North America and a number of countries in Europe, Lync, the executive assistants use Lync for all the call flow stuff. There's certain call flow templates we've set up depending on what the executive wants in terms of where they want their phones to ring and how they want their assistant to manage their calls. And so they pick from one of those templates. All right. Well, well, maybe I'll pause here, see if there's questions before I get into adoption.
So the question was, are we using SIP trunking? And what was the second part? Are we using
with fax?
Fax? Yeah, so we are using SIP trunking mostly in North America and Europe, though as carriers are starting to provide it in other regions, we're looking to expand that. Having kind of a centralized voice infrastructure. We use fax. We have an e-fax system. Believe it or not, I can't believe people still use fax, but they do.
We don't have fax machines in our offices. We went to this e-fax solution probably about 4 or 5 years ago.
It's not integrated with Lync or anything like that, but it's still there. Question?
Yeah, you mentioned that you migrated users from one platform to the other to actually use their phone number, and then your gateway and routing decisions.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that?
How do we port the number?
No, how do you determine at the gateway where to route the call?
You might
Tom?
have stumped me on that. Yeah, T-shirt might be for that one. You know,
We'll have to get,
I can't say I've coded, you know, on some of our software, but let me see if I can find out. And I know there's like the second screen experience. I'll see if I can find out some of the answer there. Yeah.
We have a really smart woman that lives in Michigan that figured all
Yeah.
that stuff out, so we could take credit for it.
We are using SPCs in some locations.
Oh, Satish knows. Hey, we've got someone. Give the T-shirt back. We've got someone in the audience that can answer the question. You want to go up there, Satish? And how does the gateway know where to route the call to Lync versus to a Cisco call manager?
Okay, so So we have our own set of DID, which we are terminating on the gateway on the SVS side, and those all the calls which are associated with those DID associated with the mediation servers. We are routing those to our Lync side, and other is on the Cisco
That's
side.
what I was going to say, but I was too scared to say it.
Does this answer your question?
Maybe I can talk to you after.
We'll talk after.
Okay.
This is one of the guys that makes Lync run smoothly for us. So.
Okay, there was a question here.
You mentioned you want to increase the video adoption. What did you do to be proactive in the back end to prepare for that? It's hard to adjust your circuits and all that speed to make up for. Let's say you get 50% adoption.
Yeah. So the question was, what did we do to get ready for more aggressive video adoption? And actually, this was a big debate we had. We had to make it up. We had to guess as to what we thought it would be. It turned out, so that's why we over-provisioned bandwidth when we were doing the Lync rollout. And then when we get into adoption, we'll talk about more of the campaign we had around video. But what we found was there was all this concern about, oh my gosh, video is going to just kill the network. But the adoption's been difficult. People just aren't, especially older folks like us, just aren't used to video as the primary thing. But what we're finding is we hire 70,000 or 80,000 people a year into Accenture, right? And a lot of the newer folks, I think it's more natural for them. And then that's why we put in this operational process around network bandwidth to say when you get to certain levels, just automatically upgrade.
So you guys looking into Lync room systems? But what do you guys use today on your meeting rooms? How do you guys integrate it?
So the question was, we're looking at Lync room systems. What do we use today? So we do have a few Lync room systems out there, but we weren't quite comfortable with them being ready for a really good quality experience. Historically, we've had Cisco telepresence and their EX, SX, kind of MX devices. And for the longest time, it's really just been two islands of video. There's the room-based, high-def. We've deployed about 1,700 Jabber clients to executives for remote participation. We are now piloting a cloud-based bridging solution to bridge Lync with the room-based systems. And then depending on where the Surface Hub goes, that hopefully will be a long-term answer for us.
What is your video bandwidth cap right now, and how many policies do you have covering the different ranges of bandwidth?
I can take this one, Tom.
Oh, all right.
I think we set it at a meg, or in terms of the rate limiting.
1 meg?
Yeah. We have talked about, like for executives, upping it to 1.5 or 2. It's a much smaller pool of people, so doing kind of a tiered rate limit depending on your level.
I will say, too, when we upgraded to 2013, there was a lot of debate about, we wanted to get 2013 out there faster for some of the new features. But with the gallery view and HD, there's a lot of different ways the video is behaving, and it has potential to use a lot more. And what we did was actually leave the cap the same from the 2010 to the 2013 upgrade. So that allowed us to get that out there faster without having to worry about the bandwidth upgrades. And then, as Vid said, when we start to dabble in the HD video and start rolling it out, we'll do that a bit more slowly and controlled, and slowly experiment with raising the rate in some locations for some people. Question?
I think it's just a yes or no
Oh, that's the best kind of question.
So, what are you using for VPN for your corporate-owned endpoints? And are you, when they're VPNing in, are you split tunneling as the traffic?
That's good. The question was, are we using
Yeah,
VPN?
the answer is no. So our employees we don't require employees to VPN into the network to get access to applications or to Lync. It's natively HTTPS available on the internet. The only people that really have to VPN in are systems administrators, or we've gone to semantic VIP for two-factor authentication, so even that doesn't require VPN anymore. So we don't do split tunneling for Lync if you have to VPN in. Question? What's that?
The question was how large of a team supports this. It's about 50 FTEs
Globally.
at this point, globally. Yeah, and that's across all tiers. But yeah, it's a big group. Huh?
24/7.
Yeah.
Majority are based in India, Philippines, Buenos Aires, so lower cost locations. We do have a team here in the U.S. as well.
So how does your Lync infrastructure look like? Can you
How does the Lync infrastructure?
Yeah. Yeah, the question was, what does the Lync infrastructure look like? We're in 4 data centers. Everything is highly available. Without going into too much of the specifics, I mean, everything is load balanced pools of servers, and we've got a full edge infrastructure in each of our data centers, and then we kind of have the failover. So of those 4, 2 of them fail over to each other. So if one goes down, people can seamlessly reconnect to the other data center. We've got it's like 220 odd servers at this point.
Per data center,
I think that's global.
How many servers per data center? Per
Total.
data center, yeah. 90 per data center.
90 per data center, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Question? Are we planning to go Lync online? Not yet. With Skype for Business, maybe there's certain workloads we'll be able to take advantage of in the cloud, but it's still something we have to think through.
I couldn't hear some of the questions, so I thought I'd come up here.
Okay.
Considering you guys already had a Cisco call manager in place, what factors did you use to justify, instead of building on the Cisco call manager architecture to deal UM and things, what factors did you use to justify going to Lync?
Yeah,
Sure. We made the decision probably in 2007, 2008, and times have changed, but I can tell you the 2 biggest reasons why we didn't go kind of the Cisco stack. One, their architecture almost assumes or requires that you're VPN'd into the network, and we're just, that's just not the way our people work, and we would have a revolt on our hands if we did that. Second big thing was at the time, and even now, I'm still not sure they have it right, is the poor integration between kind of IM and presence and things like that with audio and video and WebEx, right? They're just really 2 different tools, and so the user experience we just didn't feel was quite as strong. Mm-hmm. Plus, Microsoft gave us like lots and lots of money to do this. They didn't do that for you guys? No? Okay.
One more question over here.
So was the adoption program around getting people to use Lync in general, or getting them to use new features like call and video? Because IM just seems straightforward and obvious.
Yeah, I mean, we had no issues with people using Lync, just the basic capabilities. IM and presence, I mean, as soon as we had it, you could globally ping anyone. That was fairly easy. Even the peer-to-peer audio was straightforward. It was really about audio conferencing, sharing, and video. And then really focusing in on how to use it to drive real business value, so whether it was travel savings or other things. So maybe that's a good segue to get into what we did. So one of the things we think is really important if you're going to deploy Lync, you can get the technology out there, people will use it, but to really extract business value and to make yourself look good in front of your bosses in the business, we really think it's important to have a change management adoption program that's very targeted. So the metric stuff that Tom talked about was really key, the adoption metrics. And so we had a global team that was really looking at those metrics and saying, where's the low usage, whether it's geography or modality or certain levels of people, and how do we get them raised up, kind of rise the tide for everybody. And then we also had local teams in each of the countries focused on adoption. Just early days, I remember our CIO sent out a message to kind of his peers saying, catch us if you can. Of course, we were using it in IT. It's really about gamification and trying to get people. It was interesting, Germany, with all their data privacy stuff and everything else, was one of our biggest users of Lync video and content sharing. So showing some of those comparisons really got people to use it. But for us, we put together some campaigns, marketing campaigns, on how to get people to think differently about what Lync could do for them. And so this first one was Libby Laptop. We created this persona.
9:30. I clearly said 9:30 when I ordered the car. My flight is at noon. How soon can you get here? Incredible. Nothing's going my way today.
Morning, Jack. What seems to be the problem?
What the? Who are you?
Who am I? I'm Libby. Ready, willing, and more than able to make you even more perfect than you already are. So what can I do for you?
You can start by getting me to the airport. I have a plane to catch, a team meeting this afternoon, and my car is late. Way late.
Okay, let me check on that car. But why are you flying to a team meeting anyway?
Listen, travel is part of the job. We have these team meetings once a quarter, and they're always face-to-face. If I'm not traveling, I'm not working.
Okay, I get it. But who says you need to jump on a plane to meet face-to-face?
Hey, are you here to help me or to hassle me?
Do what you want, Jack. It's your life and your budget. I'm just saying I can take you anywhere you want to go and bring you face-to-face with everyone you need to know, all from your own laptop. Want to connect with your team? Lync is all you need.
I know. But this is a complex delivery schedule. Our team always meets in person.
Okay, I get it, Jack. But suppose your team could meet more and travel less. Lync and other video options can make that happen.
So instead of hustling to make my plane, I should connect via video from home or the office?
You know, you're much smarter than you look.
Cancel that car. I'm not going to the airport after all. But if this doesn't work, I'm holding you accountable.
No problem. You know where to find me. Take it from someone who knows the benefits of working virtually. The next time you plan to hit the road, think about everything virtual meetings can do. More FaceTime, lower costs, and better work-life balance. Accenture people travel a lot. Just think of the payback for us and our shareholders when we trade travel time for FaceTime. Face-to-face meeting without place-to-place travel. It's the Accenture way to work.
So this is just an example of a campaign, because we a big focus of ours. We don't need to do this next video, but a big focus of ours was how to get people to change their thinking and traditional way of working. And so one of the things we did was incentives and gamification. The lead is here who runs our global portal and a lot of our collaboration apps. So we set up this Lync leaderboard, and early days we had the top 250 people of the company on this leaderboard, and they all want to know where they stand relative to the others. Another interesting thing that the team came up with is badges. So you get badges for audio use, badges for video use, and you can get a bronze, silver, gold, platinum. We had giveaways, based on usage and adoption. And these things will actually show up on your internal people pages. And this is all data we take from the Lync monitoring database, feed into our collaboration apps, and that's what surfaces. Who is that handsome devil there? So the gamification has been really important. The other thing that we did was we went and we worked with, so for Accenture, our client team, so the people delivering service to clients are really the core of what drives revenue and of our work. So we worked with about 20 to 25 of them and had a targeted approach to how do we help them reduce travel savings or reduce G&A costs so that they can improve margins. And we basically built 10 to 15 success stories that we put onto our portal. Because then what it does is it helps people frame a reference saying, oh, I do the same work that they do. If they can do that, then we can do it for our team. And so these are just 3 examples of success stories that we were able to generate. And when you show numbers in terms of hard savings, that tends to get people to think differently as well. All right. I think we're running out of time. We're
5
actually,
seconds.
huh?
5 seconds.
5 seconds.
Share all of
okay.
our lessons learned.
I think we talked through all of this stuff. You know, the metrics is really important. Focused on call quality. That was a question. The network. I mean, a number of you asked about the network. That is probably one of the most important things to focus on to make sure that the Lync works appropriately with the right quality, so that people, you know, can use it and be productive. So that was. We have 2 more T-shirts left here. Hopefully, did you guys find this interesting? Yeah? Good.